Herzlich willkommen, liebe Zuschauer, zu einer weiteren Folge von Im Auge des Bruders mit Scott Ritter hier auf unserem YouTube-Kanal Gegenpol. Mein Name ist Monique Stegemann und in dieser Woche geht es um folgende Themen. US-Präsident Joe Biden und Ursula von der Leyen vergleichen Wladimir Putin mit der Hamas. Wie seriös ist so ein Vergleich? Israel behauptet, sich im Dritten Weltkrieg mit dem radikalen Islam zu befinden. Ist das eine zutreffende Behauptung und wer ist dann Freund und wer Feind? Und um die stark befestigte ostukrainische Stadt Awdijewka toben heftige Kämpfe. Wiederholt sich das Bachmut-Szenario? Hallo Scott, schön, dass du dir wieder die Zeit genommen hast. Wie geht's dir?
Doing great, thank you.
Das freut mich. Scott, lass uns auf das erste Thema schauen, denn US-Präsident Joe Biden hat es vorgemacht, EU-Kommissionspräsidentin Ursula von der Leyen nachgemacht. Auch sie stellte die radikal-islamistische Hamas auf eine Stufe mit dem russischen Präsidenten Wladimir Putin. Was sollen diese Vergleiche eigentlich bezwecken? Welche Ziele werden damit verfolgt und wem nützt das alles?
You know, there's an old saying that you can't solve a problem unless you accurately define the problem, because any solution you're coming up with, if it's not attached to a properly defined problem, is no solution at all. So right off the bat, we know as soon as somebody, whether it be the President of the United States or the President of the European Commission, makes a comparison between Vladimir Putin, the democratically elected president of the Russian Federation, and Hamas, a resistance organization that is labeled as a terrorist entity by many nations. That means that there's no sound purpose behind what they're doing, because it makes no sense. They're simply trying to score cheap political points among an audience of their own selection. They're not going to impress any thinking human being about the soundness of their thought process or the validity of the comparison being made. There is no comparison between the two. There's nothing. There's no point to be made there except the following: that the West is in a position where its policies regarding Russia and its policies regarding Israel and Hamas are both failures. And the West can't explain honestly why these policies are failing. And so they do what they always do. They fall back for cheap verbal stunts, trickery, but it means nothing. It just shows the absolute lack of any intelligence or intellectual capacity on the part of those who make such claims.
Der israelische Minister Israel Katz meinte kürzlich in einem Interview mit der Welt, dass sich Israel, Zitat, mit dem radikalen Islam im Dritten Weltkrieg befindet. Das ist doch eigentlich eine Steigerung zum sogenannten Krieg gegen den Terror von US-Präsident George W. Bush nach den Anschlägen von 9/11. Oder wie siehst du das? Und was könnte das im Konkreten bedeuten, wenn sich Israel als Frontstaat im Dritten Weltkrieg gegen radikalen Islam empfindet? Wer sind dann die Gegner und wer die Alliierten?
I think Israel's in an absolute state of panic right now. They are looking at domestic political collapse, even prior to the actions by Hamas, and they're looking at the distinct possibility or probability of military defeat. They're also looking at a situation where they have lost the momentum in terms of international public opinion is not going Israel's way. Fact is, everything is going bad for Israel right now. Their military is not capable of doing anything other than committing mass genocide against a helpless civilian population in Gaza. If their military was truly a military, A, they would have prevented the Hamas attacks, and B, they'd be in Gaza right now hooking and jabbing with the Hamas fighters. That's what a real military does. Instead, the Israeli military is cowering on the outside of Gaza because they realize they don't have the training. They don't have the intestinal fortitude. They don't have what it takes. They can't do it. They're not that good. Domestically, they're looking at a situation where they stand for nothing. What is Israel? Is Israel a nation where a corrupt prime minister can use his political party to seek to bring down a third equal branch of government, the judiciary, simply because he doesn't want to go to jail for the crimes he committed? Is this a democracy? They fooled people into believing that Israel cared about peaceful coexistence. But political Zionism has nothing to do with peaceful coexistence. It has everything to do with the violent oppression, suppression, and elimination of any population that gets in the way of their vision of a greater Israel. This has been laid bare. So yes, Israel is in a third war because this is a fight for the survival of Israel. We get to be honest about Israel. Israel no longer gets to play the morale card. Ask yourself this. After the Holocaust, after the world has agreed that never again would we stand silent while one nation that had imbued itself as a supreme race fell upon another that they viewed as subhumans and sought to eliminate their presence from the earth. We said never again. It's happening right now before us. Israel claims to be the master race, God's chosen. What does that mean, God's chosen? That means that the billions of other people who aren't part of the Israeli tribe are not God's chosen. And therefore, in the eyes of the Israelis, they are less than human. This is the reality. They are murdering the Palestinian people before our very eyes, and we are doing nothing about it.
US-Stützpunkte im Irak und die völkerrechtswidrigen Stützpunkte in Syrien sind bei einer Gewaltexplosion im Nahen Osten immer wieder Ziel von Drohnen- und Raketenangriffen des neu formierten sogenannten Islamischen Widerstandes im Irak. Das Pentagon bestätigte nun, dass bei den Angriffen mindestens 24 US-Soldaten verletzt und einige sogar nach Ramstein ausgeflogen wurden. Sind das nur Ablenkungsangriffe, um CENTCOM an verschiedenen Fronten unter Druck zu setzen? Oder erleben wir tatsächlich eine breite Formierung des Widerstandes gegen die US-Präsenz in der Region, die durch Washingtons massiver Unterstützung von Israel angeheizt wird und sie auch zuschlagen könnte?
I think, first of all, we have to understand that there is no legal foundation for the American military presence in the Middle East today. What they're doing in Syria is not just illegal occupation. It's an ongoing war crime that we're stealing the natural resources of Syria from the Syrian population. Our presence in Iraq is confused. We have used money and we've used threats to intimidate the Iraqi government into allowing this continued presence. But we can't explain it. We can't justify it at this juncture. We're there simply to impose our will on a population that is tired of being bullied by the United States. And I think what we're seeing right now in the Middle East, in Syria, in Iraq, is an occupied people saying enough is enough. We don't want you here. We want you to leave. And if you won't leave, then we will make you leave. And that's what's happening. This is every bit as patriotic an activity by the people of Iraq, by the people of Syria, as the Sons of Liberty and Samuel Adams were patriotic in seeking to evict British tyranny from American shores.
Die ostukrainische Stadt Awdijiwka entwickelt sich seit über einer Woche zu einem neuen zentralen Frontabschnitt, um den die heftigsten Kämpfe toben. Kannst du unseren Zuschauern kurz den strategischen Wert dieser Stadt erläutern? Was würde der Verlust von Awdijiwka für die Ukraine bedeuten und was würde die Eroberung für Russland bedeuten?
Awdijiwka is important to Ukraine because it is very close to Donetsk. And from Awdijiwka, Ukraine has been able to carry out artillery bombardment of Donetsk to punish the people of Donetsk for the crime of not wanting to live under the tyranny of the Nazis. So if Russia were to liberate Awdijiwka, they would be able to eliminate this bombardment. But that's not a strategic victory. That's a moral victory. To be honest, Adveka has as much strategic importance as Bakhmut. Okay, Bakhmut fell to the Russians. Did the war end? Was it all over? Was this Stalingrad? Was this Moscow? Was this Berlin? No, it was Bakhmut. What made Bakhmut important? Not its geographical location, but the fact that Ukraine committed that they would not allow the city to fall. And Russia created an operational environment that trapped the Ukrainians into continuing a policy that was unsustainable, continuing a plan that was unsustainable, pouring tens of thousands of lives away into a battle that meant nothing other than the death and destruction of Ukrainian armed forces. The smartest thing the Ukrainians could do is to abandon Adveka today, to take the thousands of men that are there, pull them back, and form another defensive barrier, because they're going to lose the town. They cannot hold on to the town. They will die trying to hold on to the town. And Russia's in the position of allowing them to die. That's what this battle will shape down to. It will be another Bakhmut, where Russia has created an environment where the Ukrainians aren't surrounded. Therefore, the smart thing for the Ukrainians to do is to leave through the route that Russia's left open. But the Ukrainians instead say we will pour reserves into this battle in the vain hope that we can somehow hold the Russians back. They won't hold the Russians back. The Russians have thought this through very well. This will be a strategic victory for Russia, not because Adveka is such an important piece of terrain. It's because Ukraine is going to sacrifice whatever's left of their military reserves in a fruitless battle, a futile battle, to try and hold on to a piece of territory that means nothing.
Wie wird sich der bevorstehende Winter auf das weitere Kriegsgeschehen deiner Meinung nach auswirken? Die Ausgangslage ist dieses Jahr schließlich eine andere als noch im vergangenen Jahr.
You know, this time last year, people were talking about the great Ukrainian counteroffensive and how Ukraine was going to get all the equipment they needed from the West. If the West would only give Ukraine, you know, hundreds of tanks, hundreds of infantry fighting vehicles, hundreds of artillery pieces, unlimited ammunition, unlimited amounts of money, train tens of thousands of troops. If this only could happen, then they would defeat Russia. Because you remember this time last year, Russia had suffered military reversals in Kharkov, in Kherson, and everybody was talking about how the Russians couldn't fight, hadn't have the will to fight. Those 300,000 mobilized troops were going to run away at the first sign of adversity on the battlefield. Right now, nobody's saying that. It's the Ukrainian military has been destroyed. The Ukrainian military that lacks the resources. Russia's military has proven to be extraordinarily well-led, well-equipped, motivated, and they're winning. And there's no talk about Ukraine building up a new army. Ukraine has been strategically defeated. Now what's left is to figure out what the political victory will be. How do you politically bring this to an end? Ukraine cannot win this war. Ukraine can't impose its will on the battlefield. The strategic defeat of Ukraine means that from now on, Russia will have the strategic momentum. Russia will be calling the shots on the battlefield. It will only be downhill for Ukraine. And that's what the future is. Now it's just a political question of when Ukraine and the collective West will decide that it's time to give up. You know, the longer Ukraine fights, the more territory Ukraine is going to lose forever. The more men they're going to die. They're not going to reverse this, and the world recognizes that. In the Middle East, you know, this time last year, we were talking about the Abrams Accord. We were talking about Israel normalizing relations with the Arab world. Nobody was talking about the Palestinians because nobody cared about the Palestinians. They've been allowed to be relegated into insignificance for the world. Everybody was talking about, you know, Israel normalizing relations, Israel positioning itself, Israel finally emerging as a nation that would be treated by the Arab world as co-equal. No one's talking about that today. Palestine is right on the front burner. And it's a reality that's never going to change. What Hamas did is ensure that the world now will insist on a solution to this Palestinian problem. And it's a solution that Israel would never have been able to consider had they not been defeated. Israel has been strategically defeated.
Vielen Dank, Scott, für deine Zeit und deine aufschlussreichen Analysen.
Thank you.
Wir freuen uns schon auf nächste Woche.
All right. Have a good day.
Dankeschön, tschüss.
Ja, bye bye.
Meine lieben Zuschauer, auch an euch herzlichen Dank fürs Zusehen. Wenn euch die Sendung gefallen hat, teilt das Video doch bitte breit in den sozialen Medien und abonniert unseren Kanal Gegenpol. Folgt uns unbedingt auch auf die Plattformen Odyssey und X, ehemals Twitter. Und vor allem, wenn ihr mal Fragen habt, die wir unbedingt an Scott Ritter stellen sollen, dann schreibt sie uns doch in die Kommentare. Ich freue mich auf euch, eure Monique.